Okay, I see folks starting to join us. Thank you so much for joining us here for Grow Smart CLT. We're really happy to have you with us tonight. We've got a fantastic program lined up with some excellent speakers from CATS, as well as 2 community leaders who are going to share their perspectives about the importance of public transportation for our communities. So first, we are going to just share some high-level logistics. So Tariq is going to start sharing the screen, and we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the basic logistics of how you're going to interact with us tonight. So you may be more familiar with Zoom meetings, which allow all the attendees to see each other, but we have this set up as a webinar. So we are going to definitely engage with you all. We want you to type your questions into the chat box as we go along. So if we go to the next slide there, we can explain how that's going to work. So we don't want you to save your questions until the very end. We want you to share those questions to the panelists by just typing them in the chat box, and Eric on the Sustain Charlotte team will be moderating that. So we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. Also want to let you know that you do not need to write down all of the links for the various resources that we'll share with you tonight. If you're registered for this event, if you're watching, you will get an email from us tomorrow that will have all of those links in it. So please just concentrate on enjoying the evening and learning, and know that you'll get all those links. There also will be a survey in that follow-up email tomorrow, and we would love to have your feedback so we can improve the event. So first, we are going to just kick off with a fun little poll. We want to know how you would use the Silver Line. So you can go ahead and answer the poll here. So for what purposes would you likely ride the Silver Line light rail? So keeping in mind that this light rail line would run from the town of Matthews up through East Charlotte, around the northern end of Uptown, out to the airport, and then into Belmont. So the choices are commuting for work. If it would be your main source of daily transportation, that would include your work commute if you commute to work. Would you mainly use it for special events, day trips, maybe a night out on the town, maybe just occasionally for errands? Would you use it to access the airport? Or maybe you're here because you're not sure how you would use the Silver Line, or you have another idea, and we'll ask you more about that in the survey that you get tomorrow. So just looking at the poll results so far, keep those answers coming, but it looks like a lot of people would be using the Silver Line to travel to those special events, the day trips, night out, so leisure. It's great to have options for not driving a car to get around the county. Looks like a lot of people would also want to use the Silver Line to access the airport. So that's really exciting to see all the different ways that you might use the Silver Line. So we will also share those results with you in the survey tomorrow. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to very briefly, okay, I'll wait till the slide appears there. Just really briefly want to tell you a bit about Sustain Charlotte. We are a nonprofit organization. We advocate for smart growth and transportation choices. We want the Charlotte area and Mecklenburg County and the region to grow in a sustainable way. So if you enjoy events like this one tonight, we want to keep bringing those to you. So there's a number of ways you can support us. You could make a one-time donation, become a Sustain Charlotte member starting at $5 a month, and get a cool t-shirt as some of the member benefits. So you can go to sustaincharlotte.org/membership and check that out. If you work for a business, you can also ask your company or organization about becoming a Sustain Charlotte partner. We have a lot of great benefits of that. And we also have a lot of employees that support us through employee match giving programs at their companies. So if we go to the next slide. Now I am pleased to share with you that we have 3 wonderful speakers tonight. First, we'll have a presentation from Andy Mock. Andy is the LYNX Silver Line Senior Project Manager at CATS. He has a lot of experience. He's worked at CATS since, I believe, 2002. And he was very involved as well with the planning process for the Blue Line extension. He managed track and system construction, design, real estate, and railroad agreements. And he will be, of course, talking about the Silver Line tonight and ways that you can get involved. I'm going to save my more in-depth introductions of Astrid, Chirinos and Joel Olsen, who are community leaders, for after Andy gives his presentation, when I have a little bit of an interview style conversation with them. And following the presentations and the discussion, we'll have some time for questions and answers. So now I would like to turn it over to Andy to give us a presentation about the Silver Line. Andy, there you go.
The first one, I'm the first one of the day. Can everyone see the screen okay? Great.
Yes.
Thank you, Meg, for the great introduction. My name is Andy Mock, and I think Meg did a great job introducing me. I have worked at CATS for really 20 years, since 2000. I was brought in at the very early stages of the first LYNX Blue Line, when it was kind of wrapping up planning and going into implementation. So I really spent my whole career on the planning, design, and implementation of light rail in Charlotte. And so I'm really pleased to be able to work on the Silver Line to really wrap up a third big project for the city of Charlotte and for the community. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to give a brief overview of the process we've been through to receive public input and to refine the locally preferred alternative alignment. When I say I'm going to use the word locally preferred alternative, that really means that the Metropolitan Transit Commission, who is our governing board, that is their guidance or direction that provides direction to CATS of what projects we're pursuing. So don't be thrown by that sort of jargon. And so as a good project manager, it's always good to kind of start with a schedule slide to kind of show where we are in the process. We're at the very beginning of the pre-project development phase. And so really, we're kind of before you enter into the formal federal pipeline for review, which is called project development. Now, one key thing to note is project development is there is a period of time you have to be complete with that. And so you need to be done within 2 years. And within that 2 years, you have to have a very solid cost estimate. You need to have all your environmental work complete. In a project of the size and scale of the Silver Line, a lot of upfront work has to be done to feel comfortable to go into that project development period of time to ensure that you can be done in 2 years, because this project is just so big. So we're really spending a lot of time up front, really kind of getting our ducks in a row to ensure that we really fully understand this project and we have a good funding plan to make sure that we can actually pull this off going into the project development, FTA project development stage. So this last year, the real focus of the team that I lead has really been about taking the locally preferred alternative that was adopted back in 2019, which was a general corridor alignment, and really getting into the details to figure out questions like, well, where is the stations, and where is the light rail elevated, and where is it down low, and where is that grade, what side of the road is it on, so that we can really understand it and get public input on that and start the elected official engagement. All that's kind of wrapped up into the LPA refinement process. That's kind of where we are at this point. We've completed early scoping, and early scoping is a early federal environmental review to make sure that the federal permitting agencies come in and take a good look at the project at a high level and kind of say, is there any red flags or anything that we should really be concerned about before they take too many more steps so they can intercede if necessary. And where we're going is to the MTC adoption of a refined locally preferred alternative. So we've just wrapped up our third round of public engagement on the preliminary staff recommendations, and then we're taking those public feedback and then take that to the Metropolitan Transit Commission for information in March and for action in April. Once we have that, then we have a lot more certainty about some of the details about what would affect where the stations are and where the alignment are, so that we can begin more of the station area planning process, looking at the vision and the land use around the stations, as well as getting into a lot more of the details and the weeds about exactly what the project is from an engineering perspective, and then continuing to drill down into the environmental review as well. But before we get into the weeds, everyone likes to be in the weeds, or at least I do. I'm gonna keep it zoomed out for a minute and talk about process. So really, the phase one approach, the alignment that was given to to the design team in 2019 was a general idea. It was kind of a fat line. Look at that. If you look at the line on the left, it was kind of a general idea. We know that the alignment was going to go from Belmont to Center City along Wilkinson Boulevard in some capacity, then around Center City, and then out to Independence into the town of Matthews. So that was the general idea, but it really lacked a lot of detail about exactly how we would do that. What is our operating characteristics? How does the engineering look? And so our goal of this first phase is to answer those questions. And so the way we've done that is to figure out basically 100 different ways that we could think of how we would configure that fat line, meeting the intent and the requirements that it's been dictated by the Metropolitan Transit Commission, but getting into those weeds and to figure out what kind of definition are we really getting at. Once we kind of broke up into all these different alternatives, then we kind of came up with a shortlisting process, which boiled it down to one that we're putting forward for a recommendation for public input, and then ultimately to the Metropolitan Transit Commission. So if you think about like, how would you even start, right? So we have this big fat line. We have a general idea. That we're going from Belmont to Center City and out to Matthews. So really what we did was we kind of sat around and had lots of conversations with local stakeholders and local experts and the public to figure out, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? And so we really spent a lot of time with environmental and engineering evaluation to kind of get into some of the weeds and really understand, can we really do what was recommended back in 2019, or do we need to adjust in some way? And what would that adjustment be? We also spent a lot of time really looking at the corridor. Some parts of the corridor really haven't changed or have changed a lot, because some of the recommendations haven't really been engineered or reviewed since 2016. So just think about what could have changed in 5 years. Buildings pop up, utilities get put in, walls get installed, and we really need to spend some time to really understand, do we really even have the same corridor that we thought we had in 2016? And then, we really had a really robust public and agency engagement, and the public engagement, hampered by the pandemic, but really we were able to really come up with some really unique ways, really maybe not unique anymore now that we're all living in Zoom, but coming up with ways to really go through this process with the public through these 3 rounds of engagement very quickly, and receiving a lot of really good feedback that we're using every day. One of the biggest things that we really wanted to use in this process is really coordination. There's a lot of NCDOT projects. Almost every corridor or right-of-way that the Silver Line follows an NCDOT right-of-way or corridor or parallel to an NCDOT project. So we really wanted to really advance some of our design so we could more closely coordinate with NCDOT as they progress their many projects along the entire 26 miles. And then really to pause and stop and let's figure out what lessons did we learn from the LYNX Blue Line. I worked on the Blue Line for 20 years. In every kind of capacity you could think of, and many other people on the team outside of CATS within the city, Mecklenburg County, state, worked on the Blue Line in some capacity. Really want to take a little bit of time and get our lessons learned from that so that we can make improvements on the next project. So once we have those 100 lines that we broke up based on those kind of rationale and logic, then we kind of have to come up with a process to boil those down to one. And so really working with the many stakeholders on the team, we came up with a framework for decision-making, and that framework's based on a balancing of benefits and risks. So we're trying to maximize the benefits and minimize the risks, because we're trying to not only have a great project that creates great places and takes people where they want to go, but we also want to put ourselves in a position that we can manage our risks so we can actually implement something. So the benefits that we really identified working with our stakeholder team and through our public engagement process is really, number one, competitive and reliable transit travel time. So we want to make sure that you have a competitive trip from wherever you are to wherever you're going via light rail. We want to promote equitable transit-oriented development. So we want to create those enabled benefits and those great places around stations that everyone is seeking and loves. And so we want to make sure that we're creating that environment and that scenarios where those things can occur. And we want to improve access to destinations and local connectivity. That's one of the things that we heard loudly from the public, is that, you know, you can spend all this money for stations and alignment, but if you can't get there from your home, it's not a very good project. So really looking into it and figuring out how are the best ways that we can improve the networks to make sure that people can get to the light rail stations as a pedestrian, as a bicyclist, in their car, as a bus rider, as a, you know, micro mobility. All those things are going to come into play as we talk about those access benefits. All the while, we want to make sure that the risks are acceptable. So we want to make sure that we're putting forward a project that we can implement, and we're not dependent on some third party or some other entity that may affect the overall implementation of the project. We want to manage our capital and operating costs. That's always critical when it comes to competing for state and federal funds. So we need to have a project that is, you know, cost effective and that we can afford through our yearly budgeting to operate. So we make sure we can put trains on the tracks every day. And also in another critical thing not to be underscored is environmental screening, because this project will go through a rigorous environmental process through FTA. So using that screening early on to ensure that we don't get ourselves in trouble with putting forward a project that can't be permitted for one reason or another. So we had a robust screening process early on. And really what that kind of led us to is this preliminary staff recommendation, which really looks very similar to that of the MTC adopted alignment, but there are definitely some adjustments. And other thing to note, there are 6 areas which are called focus areas on this slide. Those are really intended only for public, you know, really to focus the public on a particular area for public engagement. Those have nothing to do with, you know, sequencing or phasing or anything like that. Really just a way for a public engagement tool. But just in general, so starting in the west in focus area 1 on the left side, starting with a terminus in Belmont, and then following along Wilkinson Boulevard on the side to Sam Wilson, and then over I-485 right near the Charlotte Douglas Airport, onto a station with connection to the airport, following the Wilkinson Boulevard the whole way down to Morrisfield Drive, where it deviates away from Wilkinson Boulevard and then follows Norfolk Southern Railroad. In this case, the Silver Line would not be within their right-of-way, but directly adjacent to their right-of-way, but would follow the railroad the whole way into Center City. And in Center City, then it would continue following the railroad along the southern side of the I-77, I-277 interstate, past and through Charlotte Gateway Station and the LYNX Blue Line with connections there to those very important transit services. Then out Independence Boulevard on the north side on a side running scenario, crossing to the south with stations at Bojangles Coliseum, out Independence the whole way to Village Lake, then transitions to Monroe Road, out to the town of Matthews, cross I-485, and then into Union County for focus area 6. And I'll show, and actually at the end of the presentation, I'll also show our online open house mapping tool. So you can go in your own time and pan around and zoom around and see some of the scenarios that we're talking about tonight. This slide kind of shows some of the emergence themes from the community engagement from round 2 of the public meetings. And so just a way to boil it down is that there was overall support of the project purpose. So people, you know, were kind of, you know, were supporting of the why we're doing this. There were local connectivity and transit travel time were the highest ranked priorities. There was general agreement with from all the towns, Belmont, Matthews, Stallings, Indian Trail, as well as the city of Charlotte. There were concerns about gentrification and residential displacement in certain locations. And environmental sensitivity in key locations was also a decision-making factor. There were generally positive views for the rail trail being integrated into the Silver Line. That's been a common theme, that everyone loves the rail trail. And airport connectivity continues to be valued by the public, and we always get comments about airport connectivity. Some of the strategies going into round 3 in this virtual environment. And one thing we heard from round 2 is that we may have leaned a little too heavily on technology. And we did hear some feedback from some communities who felt a little less comfortable working with YouTube and Zoom. And so we really spent an extra month and created a mailing, an actual hard copy mailer with all the observations and all the recommendations, and sent out to 40,000 people, anyone within a half mile of the alignment. So we really tried to make sure that we're creating an inclusive environment for even folks who may not be comfortable with technology. And it also included some targeted Spanish. We had rider alerts, we had yard signs where we actually, in some places where people said that they didn't either have reliable internet, we put yard signs with information just in case the mailers didn't get to them for whatever reason. And we also had replays of the meetings on the government channel for folks who may not know how to use YouTube. And then we followed all the normal social media and media coverage that you would imagine of a project and public engagement of the size. So moving forward, we do have, as far as process goes, so we're wrapping up the first box, which is the public review of recommendations. That the public survey is open till March 11th. So that's still ongoing, and I'll show folks how you can actually go and provide your input on that survey. We're starting the elected official outreach. We have had a lot of outreach already with Charlotte City Council and all the town councils, but it will get more formalized over the next couple months. We're meeting with all the boards, very busy time in that way. And then we're heading for the adoption of the LPA, or the information and hopeful adoption in April of this year. Now, again, once we've completed that, then we can really begin, more in earnest with evaluating affordable housing strategies and station area planning and all the things you'd expect, the area planning you'd expect around stations of a light rail nature. So as I said, here's some opportunities for the Sustain Charlotte team can kind of provide some direct feedback. There's the survey, which I'll show in a moment. You can get to that through ridetransit.org/LYNX Silver Line. You can also text the survey to text Silverline to 704-461-4441. You can email any comments to the public input line at lynxsilverline@publicinput.com. If you feel more comfortable talking with someone, you can always call our customer service line to provide comments, or you can leave voicemails. Some people have feel more comfortable with that as well. Or you can always send us a letter at CATS, Care Marketing Department at 3200 South Boulevard, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28209. So I'm gonna pause there for a moment, and I'm gonna pull up the other, if I can figure out how to do that, there we go. Our online open house, and kind of walk through that quickly. Okay, so this can be found at our website at ridetransit.org/LYNX Silver Line, and it really includes all the information that we use for the public meetings, slides and videos. If you'd like to download the map for your own benefit, you can absolutely do that. Talk about a process and schedules and how we made decisions, but most people, to be honest, aren't all that interested in that. And really what they're more interested in is the survey and the online open house or the online map that's on here. So I'm going to zoom down to that for a second. It also shows all the preliminary staff recommendations. So if you're interested in what decisions we've made, what recommendations we're putting forward, you can see all those here. This part of the presentation is the online map. So in this case, you can zoom in to any particular area and see kind of our recommendations. Pan there. And then you can kind of zoom in and kind of see where the purple line is and see and that's what we're recommending. So that's always a good tool to go back and take a look at, kind of get an understanding of specific details. And then if you want to watch any of the videos that we've done, we've done all 6 focus area meetings over the last 3 weeks. We had the last one last night. All those videos are available. The live videos with the presentation and live Q&A are available on this link as well. And then of course the survey, and please take some time to fill out our survey. we are definitely want to encourage folks to do that. We actually also have a raffle. So if you fill out the survey, you'll be put in a raffle for a $100 gift card. I will say that has been very effective. We've gotten over 1,000, coming up on 11 or 1,200 survey recipients in the last over the last couple months. So we feel like the gift cards has been money well spent to provide that amount of input. So with that, I will pause there and hand back to Meg for the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Andy, for that very detailed overview of the Silver Line planning process and for sharing so many wonderful ways that we can all give public input. I want to just let you all know that Sustain Charlotte is very committed to making sure that you as our followers have access to the latest and most detailed information about different transportation and land use projects that affect the future of the Charlotte area. So we're very grateful to have speakers like Andy who come from government departments and share information with us. So of course, Sustain Charlotte is an entirely separate nonprofit organization. We're not part of the City of Charlotte government, we're part of CATS. And so what we are able to do is share access to some really great presentations. And then as an organization that advocates for smart growth and transportation choices, we can then help really amplify the call for more investment in public transportation. So thank you so much, Andy. And Andy will be staying around for our Q&A portion as well. And now it's my honor to introduce Astrid Chirinos. Astrid is a bilingual visionary and multicultural trailblazer. She truly is. She has spent over 4 decades in North Carolina. She brings together diverse communities and engages them for the purposes of connecting their contributions and stimulating transformations and igniting equity, economic growth, and growth opportunities. She was a member of Governor Cooper's Latino Hispanic Advisory Council in 2020, became the first immigrant member of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Planning Commission, and is currently a board member of the Charlotte Housing Partnership. She's a trustee at Johnson C. Smith University as well. Prior to her current position with the YMCA of Greater Charlotte, she was the executive director of the Simmons YMCA in East Charlotte, which is the most multicultural international corridor in Charlotte, where she helped foster multi-generational programs and community connectivity through the YMCA New American Welcome Center initiatives. So I really wanted to bring Astrid to this conversation because she has been so engaged in the community. She has seen a lot of the transportation needs that our community members face. So Astrid, my first question I want to discuss with you is in your role at the YMCA of Greater Charlotte and your various community roles with other organizations, how have you seen lack of transportation choices limit both the civic participation of people who call Charlotte home as well as their access to opportunities?
Well, thank you, Meg, so much for the invitation. And I'm just delighted to be here. And after listening to Andy, I'm so much more excited about the LYNX and how we're connecting our community. You know, I am, as you said, I'm an immigrant, and I've been in the United States for about 42 years now. And Venezuelan by birth and Charlottean by choice, and loved Charlotte from the moment that I moved from Raleigh 25 years ago. And one of the reasons is because it was so accessible in so many different ways. And as time went by, coming from a city where we were very connected in Caracas, Venezuela, where everybody used public transportation, the one thing that I was surprised is like we didn't have more connected bus lines, or that we had a light rail, all of those things, even though Charlotte was so accessible, but was so accessible by car. So to me, the interesting thing is like when I moved to Charlotte, I moved on Euclid Avenue, which was right behind the YMCA. So I could walk to the YMCA or I could go in my car. So I didn't have an issue. Then it depends on the lens that you use. I became a board member. So I was a member for a long time. And then I became a board member. I had the privilege to be a board member. And then started thinking more about our policies and how do we provide services to our members. So that was a different lens, right? Before it was like, hey, I could walk to the Y, not a problem, I have a car. But then you start thinking about how are you servicing your community? And then when I was fortunate to be able to take advantage of the opportunity that came open as an executive director at the Simmons YMCA, I then realized going in there, our multicultural membership, their community, that many times might not be able to have access to our programs because, or they couldn't come in because on the east side, we did not really have a lot of connectivity in different ways, to the rest of the city. I would tell you there were like, 18,000 essential workers many times that left the corridor to go to other areas, and they had to find all kinds of different ways. It took longer, not only because they had different jobs, sometimes more than 1, 2, 3 jobs to be able to go. So it was much harder for them to be able to find ways to get to their jobs. And then the quality of life with their families was less and less, right? Many times we either spend too much time on the road and we lower our quality of life with our family, or we don't have enough access to the different ways of transportation. So it depends of what lens you're using, that transportation becomes critical. It could be just part of your life, of your income to be able to get to place, or it could just be casual, that you just need to have transportation or a nice to have. But nowadays it is critical, especially now that we are in a post-COVID reality where things are changing. So
Absolutely.
The why is very, very important for us to have the transportation because of our programs, especially for youth. It needs to be much more accessible.
Right. Is there one main thing that you think would especially help immigrants have better access to public transportation, or to be better able to use public transit?
Well, that is a huge area. Now that I'm a member of the Planning Commission, that's one of my biggest focuses as well, is to be able to provide support to our vulnerable communities, our communities of color, and make sure that all of our plans are taken into consideration, displacement of some, of where they are, but also the level of belonging and acculturation, that it is so critical to be able to be connected, actually, literally in the community. You can see I just moved. I don't know if you can see that. I just moved from the east side to the south side. But the reason why I was able to, I moved to off of Providence Road. I would have never thought about it because it was so dense, it was so difficult in the mornings and in the evenings. So I would have never, but now that post-COVID reality, the traffic has been much lighter. I just felt, okay, I'm able to work there because I'm going to have access. Well, many of our immigrants as well need to have access, but also I'm fortunate that I'm bilingual and fully bicultural, but many of them need accurate translations, accurate interpretation, accurate access, in terms of being able to understand, you saw how many miles, right, that we're going to be using. So it is very, very important that we do in culture, in language support in every way, with any culture in language. Even if you move from the United States to China and you can read things in English, it just makes a huge difference, right? I mean, that is half of that communication already. You feel like, okay, they're talking to me. So I just think that is critical for us, for our newcomers, for our immigrants, for everybody, so they feel that they belong and they can engage. And the connectivity is not only physical, but it's also emotional, mental, and spiritual in our community.
That's an excellent point. Thank you so much. Connectivity it's all about our full selves connecting with everyone else's full self. So thank you so much, Astrid, for sharing your passion and your expertise with us tonight. I would now like
for all you do as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I would now like to introduce Joel Olsen. Joel is the CEO of O2 Group Ventures, as well as the founder of O2 EMC and O2 Energies, which are headquartered in Cornelius. O2 Group Ventures is the holding company for subsidiaries that design, develop, procure, and operate clean energy installations across the Southeast. And Joel has served on the executive committee of the North Carolina Clean Energy Business Alliance, the Z. Smith Reynolds Community Leadership Council, the U.S.-Norway Fulbright Foundation, and as a board member of the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association. Joel's also a recipient of the Charlotte Business Journal Energy Leadership Award and the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association Business Innovation Award. So Joel, I want to ask you for your perspective as a owner of a solar company. You obviously value and understand the importance of reducing emissions to protect our air quality and our climate. So what role do you see public transit playing in supporting a healthy environment?
Well, first, let me just make sure you can hear me. For some reason, my computer won't put Zoom up.
We can hear you loud and clear. Yep.
Good. Yeah, just to answer your question, Meg, in my opinion, good public transit should really reduce traffic and ideally the number of single occupancy vehicles. If traffic is reduced, this will reduce the harmful emissions, the pollution, and traffic related fatalities. So I'm sure that each mile that's not driven equates to some amount of avoided carbon and nitrous oxide. But I think Clean Air Carolina says it very well that all these vehicles create a certain amount of fine particulate matter that specifically affect communities that live near our highways. And these fine particulate matter exacerbate coughing, asthma, and other respiratory issues, which really affect us all. In my business in solar, we offset the amount of fossil fuels that must be burned to generate electricity. So we focus a lot on the electricity sector. Public transportation deals with the next biggest generator of carbon emissions, which is transportation. So electrified public transportation really hits two stones, or two stones that kill one bird. And it clearly helps the region as a whole and all these neighbors that live closest to the roads. But public transportation only has these benefits if people use it. And we've seen other places where public transportation is built from nowhere to nowhere and the ridership is too low. So again, in my opinion, public transportation systems must be convenient to the existing population centers like Uptown Charlotte and the airport. Public transportation systems should be faster than driving. It should be reliable, safe, and clean if it's going to be successful and if it's going to do the most environmental good. So as a business owner and an entrepreneur working in this clean energy industry, my hope is that the Silver Line will go directly through Uptown Charlotte and directly through the closest parking garage in covered walking distance to the terminals. Planning to miss these two locations and forcing passengers to change to a people mover is a major, major concern. If there is a technology that allows the Silver Line to be faster than driving and more reliable and can, hit these two destinations, I think it's going to maximize the healthy environment that we all need and enjoy.
Thanks so much for sharing those benefits of public transit. And as a business owner who sees the rapid growth of our region, we've heard arguments about, maybe delaying investing in public transit. So a lot of different needs in our area. Why do you think it's so critical to invest in public transit now versus waiting?
Well, can you hear me? Yeah, we've got a generational opportunity to make Charlotte a first-class city. Growing up here, I remember the CEO of what's now Bank of America say, in order to have a first-class bank, we must be headquartered in a first-class city. And the spirit of business supporting Charlotte and helping to invest in infrastructure is just ingrained in this region. So as someone who grew up in Charlotte, I see this opportunity with the Silver Line to really transform, our city, which is also great, already great, but we've got this fantastic airport that is not connected to our region. We have got to connect that airport in the most convenient manner possible to the city of Charlotte and the region in general. If we can do that, I think we can jump ahead of other cities that are competing for headquarters of companies, for manufacturers, for jobs in general. So, you know, the silver line's important, the red line's important, connecting our neighborhoods through greenways and the sidewalks that this transportation plan would allow us to do. We're never gonna have a better opportunity to get matching federal funds or to make this investment successfully now. And the longer we wait, you know, I think the further back in line we get to get priority for federal funds. So, you know, I am all in to support this plan and support going big now.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joel and Astrid, for sharing your perspectives. You both have been in the Charlotte area for a lot of time. You've seen a lot of changes as well as the growing need for access to opportunities. So we're now going to move to our time of questions and answers. I see some great questions appearing in the Q&A box. So Eric's been keeping track of those, and he will share some of those for our panelists to answer.
Yep, and I'm going to try to be as quickly as possible so we can try to get as many of those questions answered. The first one deals with displacement and affordable housing along the Silver Line, and comes from James asking, like, how are we going to assure that real affordable housing along the 26 miles of track will be accomplished?
Yeah, so that's always going to be a challenge, and so one of the things we've done to try to address that up front instead of as an afterthought. So we've engaged with a land use TOD firm who's assisting the city in developing some strategies to address displacement and affordable housing within the corridor. We think that's can complement and dovetail existing City of Charlotte policies. So there will be with the Silver Line. It's a very complicated and challenging project, and there is likely to be residential displacement along the 26 miles at some point. So once we kind of have our alignment kind of more formalized and adopted, then we're going to enter into a process of engaging with our TOD consultant, engaging with the community to develop some strategies to address affordable housing and displacement issues that we're likely to see. Those issues are going to occur with or without, especially affordable housing issues. Those issues are there today. So the Silver Line is part of it, and I think that we're trying to be also a part of the solution and put forward some recommendations that ultimately will have to be reviewed and approved by council, the City of Charlotte Council, to move forward with whatever remedy is put forward. But we feel like we're trying to be ahead of the game as much as we can about this very sticky issue that it would be very difficult. It's very difficult to resolve.
Good. And the next couple questions, I'm going to try to combine them a little bit for you, Andy, since they deal with the Silver Line and for you in particular. One is dealing with the rail trail. Will that span the whole length of the Silver Line? And then the other two pieces of the question are, how will this connect to the airport terminal and any roadblocks that you may have come across during the project?
Right. So first question is the goal, and we've also have a third part of the project. So there's the design. There's three parts of the project at this point. There's the design, that's the nuts and bolts, that's the rail and the track and the catenary and the electronics, and that's all the stuff that we're focused on right now. But there's also two other parts. There's the TOD, which I mentioned before, but there's also the rail trail, and the rail trail is seeking to develop a vision to create a vision for light rail, or for a rail trail that goes the entire 26 miles. And so we want, and our goal is to implement as much of that as possible with the Silver Line. There will be certain situations where it's very complicated, very difficult, and maybe potentially unsafe, where we need to take the rail trail away from the Silver Line for one reason or another. But the goal is to develop the vision first, and then we can talk about implementation. And our goal is to implement as much as we can with the Silver Line, because then we can actually, we'll have a better chance to do it. And it'll just make sense in a lot of cases, because if we're out constructing a road, or we're out constructing the rail for a long segment, then it makes sense that we could also bid in that Silver Line, the rail trail work as part of that, if they're all coincident. I'm sorry, Eric, what was the other question?
How will the connection to the airport look like and connect to the terminal?
So yeah, so the airport connection is a question that we always get, and it's a good one and it's a popular one. But you know, the plan that we've been working with the airport for really years has been about their future planning for a land use vision and a multimodal center on the other side of Wilkinson Boulevard. So the idea is similar, and this is really the way that a lot of airports operate, is they have an extended terminal experience. So you'll be able to take the light rail from Gateway Station to the airport station, get off at the extended terminal, check your bags, get your ticket, then take a people mover from the multimodal center with the light rail into the main terminal at Charlotte Douglas Airport. It's really kind of the way that most airports are really doing things, and I get that it makes a lot of sense that you would have it and the light rail go directly into the airport. So when we looked at that, there is just a lot of practical and logistical challenges, including FAA requirements and restrictions about how high you can be in the air, and we have to get over Norfolk Southern and under the FAA mandated glide path, and then somehow through the built environment that is very restrictive. So in our initial investigation, it really is backed up by the planning work that was done a couple of years ago, and the recommendation is that there's really not a great practical way to get into the airport. And also, we're missing the opportunity to serve what the airport is really moving, which is this extended terminal experience with this land use vision around it. So there's been a whole lot of discussion about it, and I know that there will continue to be discussion about an airport station probably for the life of the project, but there are some very good practical rationale for doing what we're doing.
Okay, I'm going to try to combine this question a little bit. Both attendees use the word roadblock. So
roadblocks.
Yeah, any roadblocks you come across, and this one in particular, you might be able to explain a little bit more, is how you're partnering with our counties around us and relationship to the Silver Line and infrastructure that may block, like bridges and stuff like that.
Yeah, so far, I would say, we haven't run into the roadblocks yet. That time will come, and there will be roadblocks, and there will be challenges that we're going to have to overcome with all the parties that we're working with. So at this point, we see many potential roadblocks that are out there. We have to cross two different railroads, several times. So there's many opportunities for roadblocks, but we haven't actually got to that point yet. But as far as partnerships, everyone, we've been working with from all the towns, including the city of Belmont, town of Indian Trail, town of Matthews, town of Stallings, city of Charlotte, everyone's very, supportive at this point. And so there's a very kind of good kind of collaborative nature that we're working with all the towns. As the towns are developing their land use plans and visions around the stations, we're working hand in hand with them to trying to complement each other. So there's that. Now there's an implementation question that's going to be out there driven by funding by the other counties, and that conversation is occurring between the counties elected officials and the city's elected officials and the public about priorities and implementation for the Silver Line. And I think as that conversation continues, we'll know more about what relationship that we're going to have with other counties that may be outside of the Metropolitan Transit Commission.
Okay. I have a somewhat related, but going in a different direction of partnerships with private, either private companies or developers to help support the Silver Line. Instance like real-time transportation information being built in. It looks like they're kind of giving examples in other major cities where they really partner with some of that information infrastructure. Is there anything like that can be built in with the Silver Line?
Sure. I mean, I think I think everything's on the table at this point when it comes to technology. Things are changing so fast as it relates to technology. I mean, we just completed the Blue Line extension, 3 years ago, And just from that, I'm talking about signal systems and light rail communications, and everything that we, have built just 3 years ago is subject to change because technology changes so fast. So, I mean, I think everything's on the table for those public-private partnerships. And I think that conversation, as we get into more of the detailed design and technology requirements of the project, those conversations will happen.
Trying to find some, making sure I didn't miss any questions. Nancy asked if you have any demographic data of the immigrant community and their satisfaction or dissatisfaction with public transportation currently in Charlotte.
I don't have that. I don't have that information. I mean, we may have done some surveys through some other mechanisms, but I think that's something we'd have to follow up on. So I don't have that information. Maybe Astrid could help.
Well, if I may, thank you. And I just wanted to say, I think that part of it is communication and information. I don't think a lot of the immigrant community, it depends on how you get the information. A lot of the immigrant community does not understand yet how to use the system. Many times because we might not provide the information the way that they can receive it best. Sometimes we might assume certain things. So I think this is a great opportunity. I'm glad that we're talking, Andy, because I think it will be great. There will be better users of the system that we're providing right now and the opportunities if they can understand better how to access in culture, in language, and we could do it in all kinds of different ways. So we can work together on that.
Yes, send me some information and your information. We can have some of our communication folks reach out and we can maybe set up a program. Sounds like a good idea.
Thank you. I mean, and I know that you already have, a phone and everything at the city. There is, but it's not, I think that it needs to be a little bit more robust, especially in this rollout that is so, that is so big.
Okay, I think we're just about out of time. I know one question, if you could answer it really quick, is how is Mecklenburg County and the government involved there? Are they participating in any of the Silver Line planning?
Yeah, Mecklenburg County is heavily involved as it relates to mostly at this point park and recreation. So county park and rec is directly on the team. So when it gets to like decision making on alignments, park and rec is critical to our decision making for sure. We're also starting to engage from a county real estate and asset perspective. So we're having some conversations with the county about property that they may own adjacent to the Silver Line and some of the uses that they may plan and foresee for some of the properties around the stations. As we get in further, we'll get into more of the permitting and the building code and all the things that the county really puts forward as well. And ultimately, we're going to have to be really working closely with the county on almost everything that we do to really implement a project of this scale.
Well, thank you so much to all of our speakers. We do have a few quick announcements. We promise we'll have you out by 6 o'clock. Tariq is going to pull up the slides, but I really want to express our appreciation to Andy for sharing all of the information about the Silver Line, for Astrid and for Joel for serving us on the Sustain Charlotte board and sharing their perspectives tonight. The first update that we have is just, we don't usually do a lot of work at the federal level, but there's some really exciting things happening now and some opportunities over the next year. The American Rescue Act that's currently being considered by the US Senate includes $30 billion for transit, which is about 3/4 of the way to the $39.3 billion that's estimated to be needed for a full recovery of transit, which has lost ridership and fare revenues because of COVID-19. So we're pretty excited about that. There's a big once in every 5-year opportunity coming up in September when the transportation reauthorization comes due. So it's an opportunity with the new administration to ask for more equity between funding highways, which currently receive 80% of federal funding, as well as much more favorable requirements compared to transit, which only receives 20% and has much more stringent cost sharing requirements than highways do. So we'll be keeping tabs on that and partnering and letting you know about opportunities to add your voice. We also are working to support the $1 cent for mobility sales tax referendum that may be delayed due to the delay of the census and the redistricting. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that and ensuring through our work on the Charlotte Regional Transportation Coalition that there's a really equity-based way of investing that revenue to build not just the transit system, but the multimodal transportation. So if we go to the next slide, we'll share some really practical ways that you can help be an advocate for transit. Sustain Charlotte, again, this is Sustain Charlotte, not CATS, but we have launched a petition which now has over 500 signatures since we launched on Thursday, really asking the CEOs of Norfolk Southern Railroad and North Carolina Railroad to get the Red Line back on track. This is the commuter rail as it's currently adopted in the 2030 transit plan. We do understand and appreciate that there is a need for more frequent transit service between the North Mecklenburg towns and Charlotte. So there is still a lot of, I think, potential for looking at different technologies, like an emissions-free train is being looked at in Boston, as well as ways to make that service more frequent than just kind of the peak AM and PM commuter service. So it really meets the mobility needs of the people using it. If we go to the next slide, we have an opportunity for you to get more involved, either as an individual or an organization. Most of us live in some type of neighborhood, and we have a lot of neighborhoods and community organizations involved in the Charlotte Regional Transportation Coalition, which is facilitated and convened by Sustain Charlotte. And Tariq, who is advancing our slides, is the coordinator of that coalition. You can email him if you want more information. Our next meeting is Tuesday, March 23rd. And again, all these links are going to be in the follow-up email that you will receive tomorrow. If we go to the next slide. Mark your calendars. Actually, you can already get tickets for the Charlotte Sustainability Awards. We're going to be hosting this on a really exciting platform. So if you have some Zoom fatigue, we're not going to be using Zoom. We are planning this to be the premier sustainability networking event in Charlotte for this year. And we're really excited not only to honor the nominees and winners of the awards, but to give you all a chance to connect to each other in a really fun environment. So we'll share that the link, sustaincharlotte.org/awards, and you can get your tickets to that event. And then if we go to the next slide, we just want to let you know to mark your calendar for our next Grow Smart CLT event, Wednesday, April 15th, same bat time, same bat channel, 5:00 p.m. We will have staff from Charlotte DOT talking about the strategic mobility plan, which is a really important plan to ensure that we have transportation choices here in Charlotte in the future. So we hope you join us for that. We'll have registration open soon. And if we go to the last slide, again, I just want to thank you all for attending. We know that your time is valuable, especially your attention during these trying COVID times. We hope to be back with you in person as soon as it's safe to do so. And again, I just really want to thank Andy, Astrid, and Joel for sharing their time, their passion, and their expertise with us tonight. So we hope you have a great evening, and we will see you hopefully back here on April 14th for Grow Smart and on April 22nd for the Charlotte Sustainability Awards. Have a great night.